All right, I think we could probably get started here. So today I'm going to be talking about using Visual Studio Code as your default PowerShell editor. Now, hi everyone. Hi. Hi. My name is Tyler. That's me. If you couldn't tell, we look a lot alike. I'm a software engineer on the PowerShell team at Microsoft. This is actually a picture from the Space Needle for those of you who have been up there. They remodeled it recently. I'd highly recommend checking it out. That's my handle on Twitter right here. If you follow me or if you don't follow me yet, check that out. It's also my handle on Twitch, where I do some live streaming, namely live coding different things in the PowerShell world. There's actually a pretty big community of live streamers in the PowerShell community these days, so I highly recommend looking into that. PowerShell Live is the handle, both Twitter handle and Twitch handle for a bot that hosts all of the PowerShell community. And if you have more questions about that, feel free to talk about that with me afterwards. But with that said, let's get started. Today, you like that? It's a good. It even goes backwards when you go back. It's pretty good. One more time. Half of you are like, that's amazing. The other half is like, why? Today, we're going to be answering a few questions. First thing is, what is Visual Studio Code? The next is how VS Code can help us write better PowerShell scripts and modules. Then we'll talk about some ISC compatibility stuff and making VS Code very much so like the ISC experience, and a little touching on what's to come. I do want to start out by saying this is kind of a beginner-focused talk. So if you're already like a heavy user of the PowerShell extension, this is probably not the talk for you. But I want to give you a chance to go to some of the other talks that you were, if you were on the fence with this talk and some other one. I would not be afraid or sad if you walked out right now, but I just want to give you that as a heads up. All right. Sweet. So I want to introduce you to my friend here. His name is Joey, and he's pretty sad. And why is he sad? Because he keeps hearing about VS Code, but he doesn't know where to get started. Or he keeps hearing about VS Code, but he really doesn't understand the hype. So he's sad about that. And this, do you people know? Do you know who this is? It's Joey. Wow, that looks awful on this high resolution. Yeesh. Anyway, so Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a product by Microsoft. It's a free, open source, lightweight text editor / IDE. It's got this nice extensibility model. You can install extensions with it. And it's overall just a very nice text editor for whatever you're doing. I want to be super, super clear and say VS Code is not Visual Studio. They are two completely different products and are built completely differently. Over on the left is Visual Studio. Look for the purple logo, and then over here is Visual Studio Code. The stable is the blue one, and the Insiders is the green one. The Insiders updates every day. The blue one is every month or so. And in case you were wondering what the new logos are going to look like, that's what they're going to look like. So be on the lookout for those. I think they look pretty nice, in my opinion. Anyway, so VS Code and PowerShell are actually great together. And we do that thanks to the PowerShell extension for VS Code. So we mentioned that it's extensible. And so we have a couple PowerShell extensions. One PowerShell, one PowerShell Preview. And if it wasn't obvious, the preview is, well, a preview, and it's what's to come in the PowerShell extension. So that one definitely has more bugs and stuff that we're trying to make stable. But I will ask you all, please try the preview, because that's the latest and greatest that we're trying to ship into the main product. So those are the two ones. If you go to the extension pane in VS Code, which is this little square one, and then search for PowerShell, you should see them. And you also see Adam Driscoll's PowerShell Pro Tools, which is just testament that like people are starting to adopt VS Code for other extensions as well, PowerShell related in VS Code. So I'm hoping to see more PowerShell related extensions for VS Code. All right, now we're going to blow through all the features really quick. I didn't want to go back and forth between slides and an editor, so I just recorded tiny little clips of some of the features, but there will be some actual demos that we'll do later. All right, number one, Intellisense. Intellisense, for those of you that don't know, is this. It's this. You get all the completions for what you're typing for. In addition to that, you also get this stuff on the right, which is like the syntax of that command. If a command has that available to it, it can definitely show you that kind of stuff, along with other hints. So that's Intellisense. There's also cool things like Snippets. I believe Snippets are in the ISC as well, but in VS Code, this is what they look like. So they'll show up in the Intellisense. So here's an example of a commandlet. And if I run that one, it's going to give me a verb-noun function here. And then I'll go into the parameter block, and then I'll type parameter and use a parameter snippet as well. And you see there's a bunch of different options here. Hit parameter snippet, and boom, there I have a parameter. And as I'm going through this, I'm hitting tab, which will take me to the next section in that snippet, which is very handy for writing really, really quick stuff. So that was maybe like 5 characters that I actually typed with a bunch of tabs, and I got this whole function. So it's super helpful in writing things quickly and kind of scaffolding out your module. Another thing that's big in terms of helping out is the references code lens feature, which looks a little like this. So for those of you who have tried Visual Studio in the past, you might be familiar with code lens. It's this little extra text that lives on top of the function there that says 0 references. And once I hit this video, it will actually change to 1 because getCatFact was then called in the script. And so let me just pause this really quick. There we go. And so now we have that single reference up at the top. And if I click on that single reference thing, it's going to pop up this dialog here. And on the right, it's going to list all the different references that are available. And on the left, it'll give you a little preview of where in the text that is. So it's really helpful when you have large projects with many different scripts, because also it works cross-file. So over here I have a module and a regular PS1, and I could see the reference in my PS1, and I can easily go back and forth between those. The thing that I did before was I hit F12 with this test module command highlighted, and it jumped me over to the module. So the point here is it's very easy to kind of navigate around your projects. For those of you that are also familiar with the ISC, there is this concept of executing a selection with F8, and that's also supported in the extension. Basically, in this demo, I hit F8 on getCatFact here, and of course that function isn't available in my run space below. So I'll select all of it and then run it again. And then now that function is loaded in my session, and sorry, that's a bit tough to read, but I can hit F8 again on getCatFact, and then we see that Thomas does, in fact, love cats. Hi, Thomas. So that is a mechanism for having code in your editor pane and getting it down below into the console. There's also a way to do kind of the reverse of that. And in the ISC, it was also called psedit. And the idea here is that you write in your integrated console psedit and then a file path, and it'll actually go and open it in your editor. And that's what this looks like. So down below, you'll see I'm just going to like cat my profile. And naturally, there's just a bunch of text there. And ideally, I'd want to open it in my editor pane. So you can either type psedit, which is an alias for open editor file. And so I'm going to do open editor file $profile, and then that's going to open it right in my editor. super handy for, you're navigating the file system in the console. You want to quickly open up a file in VS Code. You can easily do that. In addition to open editor file, there's also new editor file, which sounds pretty self-explanatory. What I'm going to do here is, oops. My goodness. Sorry. I'm used to PowerShell, not PowerPoint. I'm sure other people have said this same thing this talk. Anyway, so I'm running get process, which we all know gets all the processes, as the name implies. But then I'm going to tape that output of get process, and I'm going to pipe it into new editor file. And it's actually going to open an untitled file in my editor with the contents of get process. So it's really helpful when you want to just preview the output of something. And it opens an untitled file. So this is not a file that lives on your file system. It's all like in memory within VS Code. And new editor file also has like a path parameter, which will let you specify a path if you did want to do that. And I also want to point out that all of those two commands, open and new editor file, work in remote sessions as well. So you could go and do enter ps session down below here, and then do ps edit whatever, or new editor file whatever, and that's going to open it right in your editor, feeling as if it was a local file, but it's actually a file that lives on the remote machine. So that's a fun feature. I think I actually demoed that last year for those of you that were here. All right, so now I'm going to get into debugging, and I figured a video doesn't really do this justice, so I'll do an actual demo for this one. So switch over to VS Code here. And I've got this pretty simple script. Let me zoom in a little bit here. There we go. You see that? Is that all right in the back? Cool. Cool. So I've got the pretty simple script here. It takes in a parameter, and we're invoking this REST method for the catfacts.ninja/fact API, which, as the name implies, gets you a random cat fact. I learned about this in Thomas's talk, who we know loves cats. I learned about it in his talk earlier this week, so thanks for that. So anyway, so what we can do is we can debug this by just hitting, oh, sorry, I was doing this demo earlier, and I need to go back to my before talk state. Okay, so I've got my script open here, and all I'm going to do is hit F5. And what F5 is going to do is it's going to run the script with the debugger, and you'll see that I've got this like highlighted line here, and that's because it stopped at a breakpoint there. And before I had placed a breakpoint, this little red dot on line 17, and so now, while I'm running it with the debugger, it's now stopped there. And there are a few things that I can do now that it's stopped there. For starters, I can like hover over this URL and see that it is, in fact, catfact.ninja/fact. So I can see what that looks like. And I can also see it over here on the left side. See that it shows up here in the variables section. And there's a lot more to the debugger. I'm not going to get too in-depth because this is more beginner-focused. But you get kind of an idea of the experience that we have here. I can also evaluate stuff in the bottom here. So I can do $URL and see that it's set to what we expect it to be set to. Or even so, I could change it to be, let's see. api.github.com/octocat. And then we'll see that over here, if we step over that, we'll see the URL has changed here. And our response that we get back is not the response from catfacts, but actually a, Hello? Oh, I guess it's gone. Insider build of Visual Studio Code, I guess. Let me try running that again. Oh, I forgot to change the URL. Sorry about this. And continue. And we see we get the Octocat here from GitHub with a little quote there. So you can kind of see that like this kind of experience allows you to go through your script, change things that need to be changed, or test out different things and ideally write more robust scripts that way. One of the features within Visual Studio Code that's a little bit more on the advanced side of the debugging stuff is they have different debug configurations. And that's what this stuff is up at the top left here. And if I hit the drop down here, I can add a configuration. And what this does is if I go back to my file explorer here, is that it adds this launch.json under a .vscode folder in my directory. And it sometimes comes pre-populated with a bunch of stuff, but in the event that it doesn't, if I start typing here, PowerShell, I'll see all the different debug configurations that we ship with in the extension by default. So, for example, by default, when you hit F5, it does the launch current file thing. But let's say we wanted to use this one, launch current file with args, which will prompt to see if you want to pass in any arguments to your script. So going back to our test script here, I'll hit F5 to run it. And I actually get this little dialog that says pass in any arguments that you want to your script. So for this fact length, I'll put like 200. And we'll actually see that for the URL, it's gone through that if statement above and has added at the very end the max length equals 200. There, yeah. And then I can continue, and we'll get our fact response. Now what I wanted it to do is just spit out the string of the fact. So I can add that, hit F5, continue, and there we go, I got my cat fact. So that's just like a little taste of the debugging experience. It certainly there's a lot more to the debugging experience, and there are docs within VS Code on all the different kinds of things that you can do with the debugger. But this is kind of a taste of it. The ideal situation is that you can install the extension and then immediately hit F5 on your script, and debugging will operate in a predictable way. So that's what we wanted to achieve. We didn't want you to have to mess with all these debug configurations from the get-go. So hoping that it's pretty simple to get started with that. All right. And like I said, there were a few other debug configurations that I don't think we need to get into right now. But yeah, check those out because some of them are pretty good. All right. Let's see. So as we see, debugging is a great way for writing scripts and making your scripts much more resilient. And the thing is that a lot of people actually say this when they switch to using VS Code. They'll say, after switching to VS Code, I've noticed a drastic increase in the quality of my scripts and modules. And these are real people, I promise. And one of the biggest features within VS Code that really helps make this a reality is the integration with Script Analyzer. Now, for those of you that were here yesterday, Chris Bergmeister, and I see him in the room. Hi, Chris. He did an awesome talk on PS Script Analyzer and some of the new stuff that's been going on with that. And so I'm going to show, hopefully, a quick demo of that. And if you're more interested in that part of the talk, definitely see Chris's talk when it goes up on YouTube after the conference. Oh yeah, demo, there you go. So back in VS Code, I've got a script here called PSA test script. Now, the script doesn't really do anything useful, but the reality is it does use some new constructs and commandlets that don't exist in every single version of PowerShell. In addition to that, it's got some like extra spaces here, which is weird, and I'll add like a GCI here, so it uses an alias. So we notice here that I've already got this like green squiggly under GCI, and if I hover over it, I see GCI is an alias of getChildItem, aliases can blah, 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 blah. Basically saying that you should probably write getChildItem because you should think about the person that you're going to hand your script off to next, right? In theory, you wouldn't want a script full of aliases that people don't necessarily know, and so it's best to use the actual command. This is just one of the very many rules the script analyzer supplies to help make your scripts much more readable and consistent. One of the things that I believe Chris demoed in his talk is some of the new work on adding this compatibility rules in Script Analyzer, which is the premise of, I've written this script on my Surface here, Win 10, PowerShell Core 6.2, but I need to make sure that this script also runs in Windows PowerShell v3 or something like that. So if you watch his talk, they might go into the details of this. Where are all these numbers coming from? Weird. Feature, yeah. There we go. You'll see something like this. This is a script analyzer settings file. And we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty here, but I'm basically saying that for the compatible syntax, I want to target these versions of PowerShell, 3, 5.1, and 6.2. And then for the commands, I want to target these compatibility packs, which is like, this is, I believe, 6.1 on Core on Windows 10. This is 5.1 on Windows 10. And then this is 3 on, I think, Windows 8 or Server or something like that. Anyway, 3. So, but I need to tell the VS Code extension to use this settings file. So to do that, I head over to the settings, and if I search for script analysis here, I have an option to put in my settings file path. So I'm just going to put ps script analyzer settings dot psd1 like that. And what I've done here is that for VS Code settings, there's a user space and then a workspace space. And at the workspace level, it actually drops a settings file in that .VS Code folder that it made before. So let's say you have a module and you want to enable certain settings just for that module, you can do that with this. And so if I go to some other folder, that settings file won't be there, so those settings won't get applied. But for this case, I want to only set it for this MISC folder. All right, so I'll go over here. And just like that, I had already warmed this up a little bit, but typically the first time that it goes through the compatibility rules, it takes a little bit of time. But now you see I've got a bunch more extra squigglies that I need to go through. One here says the constructor syntax of : new was introduced in, or doesn't support 3 and 4. And get file hash is not available by default in PowerShell version 3 on Windows Server 2012 Data Center, and stuff like, and even at the parameter level too. So there's just all of this information now that I can guarantee that the script that I'm writing here on my Win 10 with PowerShell Core 6.2 can work on these other platforms. So that's kind of like one of the benefits of using Core, is that you can you could do it in Core and use Core and still target other platforms if you need to. So that is Script Analyzer, and by using this, it does help make your scripts more consistent and hopefully much easier to pass off to some other person. So, yeah, hey.
Is there actually a way to mark these suggestions as solved or something? Because you see this in your script every time, right?
Yeah, solved as in.
Yeah, so if you are aware that you actually need to enable something in PowerShell 3 within your script, and you're done with that, is there actually a way to remove the line or remove the suggestion? Like ignore it. Yeah, like ignore it.
Just for this individual line?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry. I'll have to find out and let you know about that. Come talk to me afterwards.
Okay, cool.
So let us go back to the slides here. So another, what am I doing? Okay. So that's the script analyzer integration. It also handles formatting as well. So it will like change your script to make sure the white space is consistent and stuff along those lines. So a lot of power comes from the script analyzer integration. There's also another integration with pester and pester tests. And what this pester test integration looks like, aside from just some snippets that exist, is that it'll actually give you the little code lenses above your describe blocks. And so what this allows you to do is you'll click on those, and it will run them in the console below, right? But the powerful one is definitely the debug tests, where you could place breakpoints, hit debug tests, and it will actually like stop at that breakpoint within your test so that you can debug, why your test is failing or something along those lines. So that's to help make writing pester tests much easier and friendlier, in my opinion. That way you don't have to like go down here and like manually invoke it yourself. All right. So now the next section I want to get into is in terms of ISC compatibility. And I think I ought to start with the ISC theme. I've already been using it the whole time, just because it looks better on the big screen. But this is how you would enable it. It's quite straightforward. You open up the command palette, which is Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac. And then you just search for theme, find the color theme one, and then just type PowerShell, and then boom, you've got the PowerShell ISC look. So if one of the things that you were like very worried about is not having the look and feel of the ISC, there you go, you've got it. And although there is an ISC theme, there's also like thousands of themes out there if you want something different. So yeah, go crazy with the themes. I know I do. The other thing I want to show off is tab completion. Now, we saw that there's Intellisense, but a lot of people are used to typing something and then hitting tab and tabbing through all the different options, right? And this is what that looks like. So first, I'm going to enable the setting. So I'll go into the settings UI here. Search for tab completion. Make sure that's on. Go back to my script and then type get dash. And then from there, I'll just hit tab. And I'll continue to hit tab, which will cycle through all the things that I can possibly complete to. So I know there used to be an issue open in the VS Code PowerShell repo because people wanted this experience. And then VS Code just one day said, all right, here you go. So thanks, VS Code. Yeah, so if you're looking for that experience, that's also there, which is, as far as I know, consistent with the ISC. Also on ISC compatibility, the don't focus console on execute. So the video for this is I've got get verb, and I hit F8, and what happens is my cursor ends up getting it ends up down here in the console, right? But that's not. I don't think that's what the ISC does today. What actually happens is when you hit F8, the cursor actually stays put. And so the setting to do that, the presenter view is definitely different than what it was before. Bless you. The setting for this is going to show up here in a second. This one. So search for focus console and then switch that one off. And then that will give you that that experience of hitting F8 and the cursor not jumping down to the console. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, the reason why this is enabled, or the reason why it is the way it is by default is for accessibility purposes in the VS Code extension. So it's not something we can change the default of, but if you want that, it's there. Yeah. Yes, there is a key binding for that, but I don't know all of the key bindings off the top of my head. Sorry. I know. I should just get off the stage now. I see a couple hands. Let's just save them for the very end because I want to make sure I get through everything. And then I'm more than happy to talk afterwards as well. All right, so enabling it as the default language. If you do a bunch of PowerShell and you really only do PowerShell, you can change PowerShell to be the default language of new files that get created. And if you search for default language and type in PowerShell, any new files that you open will be PowerShell files. And we can verify that by opening a new file, and then we'll see the console jump open, and then Intellisense will also show up as well. Voila. So that's been a few different things in terms of like getting the ISC experience in VS Code. There's a doc that I've written about this, aka.ms/ISE compat. It's not complete in any sense of the word, but it's a good start, and it's a great way to point people to it who are dreading the switch over or whatever the case may be. Definitely, and this doc, pull requests are always welcome. So if you have some quick tip on making that transition easier, absolutely submit it because we want it to be simple, right? All right. So there's one other section I want to cover really quickly because it's important and it's troubleshooting. So I can tell you, I will be completely transparent with all of you and say that the PowerShell extension is not a perfect piece of software. And again, nothing is a perfect piece of software. But in case you do run into some troubles, here are a few troubleshooting things to help. First is to restart the session. Now, I've heard people, they close out of the VS Code instance and then reopen it again when something goes wrong. And the reality is you don't actually need to do all of that. You can actually open up the command palette, type restart, and you'll see PowerShell restart current session. And that's not going to restart VS Code. It's just going to restart the PowerShell extension. So you don't have to go through the hassle of closing and reopening your files. So that's one way to do it. You can also click the little version number. I don't know if you could see that, but this guy right here, if you click that, that's going to open up the same dialog as well. But before you restart your session, you should absolutely upload a bug report. And it's actually pretty simple to do. It's another command palette action. Open that up and just type bug. And there's actually an upload bug report to GitHub. And what it's going to do is actually going to open up your browser for you and fill in a bunch of details on the VS Code version, PowerShell information, and all that stuff that we need to help to diagnose what the problem was. So that's a very important step to filing issues. And alongside of that, you have to upload the logs, because the logs are absolutely crucial for us knowing what's wrong. And to do that, again, we're back into the command palette and open up the logs by just typing logs. And this will open up another VS Code instance with these log files, zip them up, and then paste them right into the issue that was opened in the previous video. Yeah, so that is the absolute best way to give us the information that we need to fix any issue that you might be having. All right, now quick look at what's to come. I've got 10 minutes left. Number one is RightProgress. Now, for those of you that might have realized, RightProgress doesn't work in the current PowerShell extension. It doesn't not work, it just doesn't show up. So, well, that doesn't really work, huh? Anyway, so in the preview extension today, it does work. And here's the living proof. Huh? Yeah, thank you, that one person. Yeah, so this was actually one of the highly requested things, and we did it in the preview extension. So the number one highest thing on the list was actually PS Readline, which is in the preview extension today. That is the flagship feature, is PS Readline support. So if I go back to my VS Code instance, which is running the PowerShell preview, you already see I've got the syntax highlighting there, right? So I can do I don't know, foo equals, open up a curly brace, and then start typing. Multi-line support, very nice. I've got, what else can I do? I'll do a write host here. And do Control R to back search. We'll back search for get process. That works fine. It's the whole, it's actually just PS Readline, but in the console. So, and there are a few things that are different between the integrated console and a regular PowerShell session, which has made this a pretty extensive challenge to get working. So there are definitely some issues, which is why it's in preview and not in stable. So please try it out. Let us know what isn't working. And yes, so that is PS Readline support. Exciting. Nice. Has anybody learned something yet? Okay, good. I'm glad. Whew. I was definitely afraid no one was going to raise their hand there. All right, and so the other thing that I want to show off in the what's to come section is I'm calling Code Lens for All, and the subtitle for this is what happens when I dive into a rabbit hole on the weekend, and the subtitle is when I should have been working on these slides. But anyway. So I'll give you a demo of what that looks like. So this weekend, I had found something that that the guy who used to work in the extension, David Wilson, for those of you who know him, I found a feature that he had added to the extension that I didn't know existed, and there's a lot of those. But one of the things that he added was this ability to make your own custom code lenses. So we saw the pester one, and we saw the references one. So the one I wanted to build was for those of you that use invoke build or Sake for build automation. And let me disable the script analyzer stuff so it's not complaining. Okay, cool. All right, so have any of you heard of invoke build or Sake before? Brandon did a talk on Sake this conference, actually, Brandon Olin. Anyway, so the gist is that you have these different tasks that you set up. It's a very DSL-y way of build automation. So I have this task called build, which just does my awesome build script here, which just write hosts, and then a deploy task. And then I have the syntax here, build, comma, which means first run the build task, and then run my script block, which is my awesome deploy script as well. So you could see how it's very DSL-y but there's these different tasks that we want to run. And typically what you would do is you would type invoke build, and then you would say build or deploy. And it would resolve all the dependencies of the different tasks correctly, and then run them. And it looks like invoke build doesn't handle rocket ships correctly. What a shame. Anyway, so one thing that I thought was, well, instead of writing this, why don't we just show a little code lens thing here, right? And the important thing that I have here is I've installed this module that I made called I'm calling it Build Runner VS Code Tools. And the important thing here is that it's a module that exists on the PowerShell gallery. It's completely separate to the extension, so there's no hard like dependency on the code being there. And so I've installed the module, and it exposes a commandlet similar to what PoshGit does, for those of you that use that, called add build runner profile script. And what this does is, if I take a look at what my profile looks like now, I see that it's just added this import module down at the bottom here. Okay? And so then when I restart my session, which we all know how to do now, I'll actually get little code lens that show up in VS Code. And this module only imports in VS Code. It doesn't import in a normal PowerShell console. And so then with these, I have the ability to just run them and even debug them as well. So like totally like cool first-class-y experience with these build tools right from the comfort of VS Code. And personally, my favorite part about this is that it doesn't actually, it's not actually part of the VS Code extension. It's totally separate. So if you think of any other like DSL-y type things like this that could use CodeLens actions like this, those are absolutely 100% possible with whatever tool that you're using. So that's another thing that is on its way. The PR is still out for this, so it's not quite in the latest version, but that'll be in the preview extension next release for sure. So that is a cool thing. All right. Lastly, but not lastly, to all of you, blah, 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 I already said this. Pull requests are always welcome. It's open source. The VS Code extension is open source. So if you know any of these languages, which I hope you know at least one of these languages, this one, you can contribute to the PowerShell extension. And this one is docs, in case you were wondering. That's the little docs.microsoft.com logo mascot thing. But yeah, so if this kind of stuff interests you, if you are like me and you like the idea of working on developer tooling, let me know. And I am absolutely available to help like guide people into contributing. I'm all for that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I also have the big link slide, which typically gets people to take out their phones. Yep, yeah. Should I smile? Okay, good. But that's it. That's all I've got. I hope that this was useful and shows how you can make VS Code your default editor. So, thank you all.